All right, folks. It is Tuesday morning, and we're going to get started pretty quickly here. My name is Gary Clark, and I'm President, CEO of Economic Alliance Snohomish County, and we are here for another Coffee Chats with Economic Alliance Snohomish County. So I actually have my coffee cup here. It's from the Kraken, spelled with a C, not a K, unfortunately, but it is an excellent morning. So we have the distinct pleasure of moving forward today with some great engagement. This is an opportunity for us to dive deep into some great engagement as far as our military efforts. And with that being said, you know what comes next. It is our housekeeping. So really quickly, to engage, this is why you're here. This is why we love having folks on the chat so that we can find out what your thoughts are quickly through chat. So please provide your thoughts, be open on the chat. And then as well, because you have your name linked here, please add your organization. And that'll help us to understand who you're with as you chat or comment, or maybe even you're brought to screen for some reason. So at any rate, I have the distinct pleasure to welcome our speaker for today, Olivia Burley, Military Spouse Liaison with Washington State Department of Veteran Affairs. So I'd like to give you a little bit more insight on Olivia. She is focused on reducing and removing employment barriers for military spouse community and ensuring resource information distribution to military spouses. She's been a military spouse for 19 years and is the daughter of dual military parents, actually. And prior to joining WDVA, Olivia worked for Operation Homefront and the American Red Cross, providing services to military families and services to those members. So I would like to welcome Olivia. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Olivia, and dive in.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. We just practiced this, so hopefully there are no issues. All right, can everyone see my screen? Thumbs up. Is it there? Okay, perfect. And okay, so Gary, thank you so much for that introduction. We can pretty much skip me introducing myself. My husband and I have been married almost 20 years, and he retired in 2019 after 27 years of service. His final assignment was out of Naval Station Everett as the executive officer. And he also was stationed at Naval Air Station Whidbey Island and commuted from Snohomish County because that's where my heart is whenever the ship that he was on was over in the Bremerton shipyards. So we are longtime Snohomish County residents. We bought our forever home here in just outside of Mill Creek and just really love this community. And as Gary mentioned, I have dual military parents as well. So this has been my life for a long time. I'm with the Washington State Department of Veterans Affairs, and I'm the military spouse liaison. That position was created by the Washington State Legislature in 2019, and I came in originating the role in June 1st, actually. The mission of my position, as Gary referenced, is really focused on military spouses and the military family community. The Washington State Department of Veterans Affairs mission is serving those who served. And the mission for my initiative is serving those who served by serving military spouses. Our vision is that every military spouse in the state of Washington is empowered and supported on their journey to fulfilling their needs and/or finding meaningful employment, and that Washington is the premier choice state for military and veteran families. In today's presentation on engaging the military community, we're going to talk about 4 major themes. The first is bridging the military-civilian divide. I have to apologize, I have a cold, so my voice just sounds so bad, and please forgive me for that. I'm going to take some sips of water throughout the presentation. Hopefully that will make it work. We're going to talk about bridging the military-civilian divide by understanding the culture. We'll talk about marketing to military-connected customers, serving the military by asking for their service, which is really focused on organizations, nonprofit organizations that are focused on community service. And then the final section will be on developing your workforce by recruiting and retaining veteran and military spouse talent. Gary, can you confirm for me that we end at just about 9:20? Is that about the right time? Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure I'm tracking. I'm going to stop for questions along the way. I am not monitoring the chat, but Gary and Katie are, so they're going to give me the high sign if something is urgent. But at the end of each section, I'll take questions. So if you want to put those in the chat, feel free. So we're going to start with bridging the divide. And it's really important to make sure that we're understanding military culture. And I always start with definitions here, because when one person is saying one thing, someone else might be saying that same word and mean something different. So active duty, and so everyone knows, I'm going to share this slide presentation with Katie, and I think Katie is going to send them out in a thank you email following this presentation. So you don't need to take any notes, and if there's something important in the slide deck, you're going to get it later. Bridging the divide, as I mentioned, definition. So active duty is an armed forces service member who works in the military full time, and that doesn't include training duty. The reason I specify that is because there's also National Guard and Reserve, and our National Guard is composed of Army National Guard and the Air Force's Air National Guard. They're generally not full time, but sometimes they are, and they generally drill 2 weeks a year and 1 weekend a month. It's important that businesses in Snohomish County have awareness of the National Guard and the Reserve, because I'm sure you already know, but at Smoky Point in Marysville, there is a National Guard and Reserve training center near the commissary and the service area for Naval Station Everett. Other important definitions are veteran. So that word means a lot of things to different people too. And I put the dictionary definition here. So Merriam-Webster says a veteran is a former member of the armed forces. Dictionary.com says a veteran is a person who has served in a military force, especially one who has fought in a war. The Veterans Administration uses the Code of Federal Regulation, which is defined as a person who served in active military, naval, or air service and who was discharged or released under conditions other than dishonorable, excuse me. So those are some different definitions. And the reason that matters is sometimes when we say veteran to someone who has served, they think you mean something else attached to that word. So it's really important that we're defining what we're all talking about. I like to think of a veteran as anyone who has served in the military service. And I always thank people for their service, and that means so much to me and my family. A disabled veteran is someone who has applied for disability benefits from the VA and had their application approved. And there's a wide range of disabled veteran classifications. They're rated on a percentage. Those can be from 0 to 100%. In Washington State, there are a variety of benefits that come to disabled veterans that are at the 100% rating. And not all wounds are visible. So someone may be a disabled veteran and have a percentage disability rating and still be working. You may not have awareness of what their wounds may be. And a disabled veteran is not necessarily someone who served in combat. Other definitions that are important: military retiree. That generally refers to a veteran who has had 20 years of service or they were medically retired. And there are different definitions and requirements for reservists and National Guard to be considered retirees. And so that is important whenever we're talking about particularly engaging from a marketing perspective. If you're asking someone to show verification of their status, not everyone will have a military ID. Military retirees will. Military spouses, there's not one definition of what a military spouse is. The word military means a lot of things to different people. That could be active military, it could be National Guard, Reserve, veteran, retiree, caregiver. So whenever you're defining particularly who you're outreaching to, or if you're offering a discount or some kind of specific event or service, you want to make sure that you're making that clear. I can tell you, as a military spouse myself, sometimes it's frustrating if you go through a program that's being offered to military spouses or the military community, and then after you get through filling out paperwork or trying to get the service, and you find out, oh, not actually eligible. Your definition is different than mine. So that's why I think it's really important for our business community to define what they mean by these terms. And then Gold Star families, spouses, and mothers, those are families whose service member died while they were serving in the US military. Military branches. Often people will say, oh, how long did your soldier serve? My service member is a sailor. He was served in the Navy. And so the soldier is a term that you would equate with an Army service member. There are 6 branches of the service. There used to be 5. Now there's 6 because we've added Space Force, and we call Space Force guardians. There aren't very many, or maybe none, actually, in Washington that I'm aware of. They're in other states primarily, but it's good to have awareness whenever we're working on engagement programs. Primarily in Snohomish County, you're going to know about Navy active duty sailors from Naval Station Everett, but then also there could be veterans who served in any of the branches, as well as our National Guard and reservists that may be drilling or living here locally. Population info. Veterans in Snohomish County alone, we have 51, and I should have specified that this is a Snohomish County statistic, 51,606 veterans. That's a lot of people. And then Naval Station Everett, there's nearly 3,000 military and civilian personnel connected to the installation. And the installation supports, between active duty and dependents, a population of over 5,000. So lifestyle. One of the important parts of understanding and bridging that military civilian divide is to understand the lifestyle. Life and work is really strongly connected in the military. You're told where to live, you're told what to wear, how to cut your hair, all of the things. You're really told what to do. And then your job. You may hear the term MOS or NEC or AFSC. Those all basically just mean your job title. And it's just the acronyms that the military is so fond of using. The Navy, where we're so closely aligned, we won't hear NEC, which is Navy Enlisted Classification. Generally, you'll hear the term rate. And at the beginning of the Navy service member's name, they'll often put a series of letters and numbers. That equates to what they do. So that tells you what their job function is in the Navy. And I wish I could tell them all to you, but I've never been able to master that. I have to look them up myself. So that's not part of this conversation. Someone else could teach an hour-long presentation on that. Not all active duty service members live on installations or in base housing. Many of them live in our community. They're your neighbors. They're down the street from you. They go to the schools that your kids are going to. And in Snohomish County, our base housing for Naval Station Everett is in Lake Stevens. So current concerns. In my role as military spouse liaison, one of my jobs is to listen to our military families, active duty and veteran, and communicate those concerns to our various partners, business, nonprofit, government agency partners. Military spouse employment is a big concern for our military population, our active duty population, as well as our veteran population. And I'll get to why that's an issue for the veteran population as well in a moment. But between April and December of 2020, 34% of military spouses reported they lost their jobs, 25% reported their hours were reduced. The number for military spouse unemployment and underemployment tends to range around 22 to 26% based on the year. So we had a big, obviously, jump in 2020. COVID was a huge impactor for military spouses. Lack of quality and affordable childcare. There are very specific needs for military families around childcare because they have a service member that's gone frequently. Housing affordability, food insecurity, and then connecting to appropriate resource are all major issues that we're hearing in particularly our active duty population. So what can you do specifically before we move on to the next section? The first is ask the question. I really encourage our community to ask people, have you served? Are you a part of a military family? Are you part of the military community? Sometimes they don't disclose that. And I think that there's been a lot of education for employers, and that's going to be our final section of this presentation on not discounting military spouses in particular if they are part of a military family as being a potential employee. But asking that question can really help you plug into the military family or the veteran family and connect to them on a deeper level. Asking what branch they served in, what did they do during their service? There's a variety of jobs and occupations within the military. It is it's Naval Station Everett's almost like a little city and how it functions. And so there's a lot of people that it takes to run a community like that. Not everyone's doing the same job. Just because they're in the Navy doesn't mean they do the same job. So you're really showing that you understand the culture by saying, what did you do? What was your job, or what is your job? Don't assume everyone has PTSD. Not everybody in the military has PTSD. But on the flip side of that, people who do, there is a misconception that everyone in the military who has PTSD is violent. And that is not true. And it's something really important that we need to destigmatize. Don't assume that all wounds are visible. There are some scars from military service that you can't see. And as I mentioned, disability ratings and being a wounded warrior, that's not necessarily something that you can see on the outside. Many service members and veterans and their families even have a hard time asking for help. And so, knowing how to plug in and really stay connected to our military community is important to connect them to our resources and all the great things that Snohomish County has to offer. Also, families serve with their service member. They move. It's hard to put down roots. It's hard to stay connected whenever you are just moving so frequently and having upheaval and disruption. And that's a lifestyle that we as military spouses and military kids have to face and endure. And having our community be understanding of that is really important. And then not every veteran really identifies with their military service. So some of them really are engaged with being a veteran, and that's how they define themselves. But not every veteran is that way. Not every active duty service member is that way. And, just like if you are a dentist, maybe being a dentist and teeth is everything you think about, but maybe it's not. And the same thing for the military. So we don't want to assume that, just because someone is a Navy service member, that everything that they want to talk about involves the Navy. So I have two really great resources to share with you, and they're both free resources through psycharmor.org. I don't work for them. I'm not affiliated with them in any way, but they have two really quick, I think they're both less than 30 minutes, webinar trainings that you can take. One is called Veteran 101 Military Culture, and the other is 15 Things Veterans Want You to Know. Those are just great resources for anyone in the community. They're not business focused, but just to understand the culture a little bit better. So I think that's the last slide in that section. Does anyone have any questions on understanding the culture before we move on to part 2? No? Good. Okay, we'll keep tracking. So our second section is we're going to talk about marketing to the military. And one of the important things about marketing to the military community is understanding that being a military-friendly business is not a one-day-a-year event. It's not November 11th. It's not Veterans Day. It's really every day, particularly when you live in a community with a lot of veterans and a lot of active duty military. So how can you make that happen for your business? There's a couple of really important things to keep in mind. One, I have not done a study on why this is, but I have found that the military community is very word of mouth and referral based. And in my role as military spouse liaison, I monitor a lot of unofficial social media channels for our military family members. And I find frequently that they go to each other to ask, where should I do business? Where can I get this service? Versus just looking online themselves. My theory on that, this is very unofficial and untested, is that because there is so much movement and you have to reestablish roots so often, that it's one way to connect with people. And so military families, instead of searching on their own for the best business for them to utilize or how to find a service and connect to it, that's just another way for them to make a friend and to connect and build community, is to ask people this question. So referral and word of mouth business spreading and business marketing is a great tool for military families and veteran families. Military discounts really drive purchases. There's been a variety of studies. I've put some information in the sources here on this slide, but there's been a variety of studies that show just how many miles a military family will drive for a discount that's specific and targeted to them in a marketing approach. So having military discounts, and again, this goes back to that conversation on definitions. who would you be targeting if you offered a discount? What specific portion of the community? And make sure you define that really specifically. And then what would they need to show to prove that they're part of that definition are really important factors. And then utilizing existing customers, because word of mouth and referral is so strong. If you have military or veteran or military spouse customers and employees, help them tell your story for you, because they feel it really helps the military and veteran community want to engage with a business when they know that that business is doing business with other military connected people, or they're hiring them. So let those people tell your story for you. If you've got military customers or military employees, have them post on social media. Do a profile on them as one of your customers. And the installation, Naval Station Everett, again, I don't work for Naval Station Everett, but they have a sponsorship activities and advertising opportunities for local businesses. And so you can contact, and he may be on the call actually, Kevin Danford I don't know if he's in, is there a way to see if he's one of the participants? If he is available, he can speak to it, but you can visit Navy Life Pacific Northwest / sponsorship. Is he on here? No, okay. You can visit that, and they have information about advertising opportunities on the installation. They put on a lot of events throughout the year on Naval Station Everett, and you can engage in a variety of ways, whether that's having a table or sponsoring something that's going on, or having signage or advertising in their magazine. There's lots of ways to get your business name out, and a lot of people aren't familiar with that. So I wanted to make sure to mention that. Carmen Pincus, I think, is on the call. Carmen, are you here? Does anybody see Carmen? No, not today. Okay. So she is a local realtor, and she has a great success story of plugging into the Naval Station Everett installation community and sponsoring different events and being engaged with the sailors and their families. So those are just some ways to really plug in and engage directly with particularly the active duty population. I mentioned discounts, and making sure to be very clear who is eligible for a military discount if you offer one. So veterans, active duty, National Guard, reservists, and family members. And if you define that, are you going to verify it? I'm not telling you that you should or you shouldn't, but whatever you're going to require, you may not realize that not every veteran has military ID. Retirees do, but not every veteran will have that. Washington State, we're so fortunate in our state, there is a designation that can be requested from veterans to put on their driver's license, but not all veterans have that. If you want to have something to verify, the DD-214 is a certificate of release or discharge from active duty service. That's paperwork that veterans have that shows that they served. That is a little cumbersome to have to carry around though. And I think that it might be a little off-putting to a veteran to have to show that for a discount. So think about how you're going to ask for verification. And I do want to say there are verification services, but they generally involve a fee. ID Me is one of them, and I think Sheer ID is another. But I'm not promoting those, but those are services that businesses can pay for. A lot of military families, active duty and veteran, have registered with verification services, and that allows them to receive discounts without having to show things, generally from larger national businesses. Holidays. So we were talking about military appreciation and engagement being all year long. There are 3 big months for military engagement. The first is that I like to focus on is April, the month of the military child. May is Military Appreciation Month, and November is Military Family Month. Obviously, we have Veterans Day and other holidays. There's a great list of observances for military. There's quite a few of them that you can find at the link I have on the slide. Also, each of the service branches really gets excited about their birthday for the Navy birthday, the holiday of when the Navy was formed, at the Coast Guard, and all those different. So, in a Navy town, that's something that might be important to pay attention to as well. And then opportunities to plug in. The Economic Alliance Snohomish County has a military affairs committee, and Marysville Tulalip Chamber also has a military affairs committee. Kind of a different focus on each one. Gary, I don't know if you want to, I didn't even tell you I was going to put this on the slide, but more sort of policy and legislation focused for the economic affairs or Economic Alliance of Snohomish County. The Marysville Tulalip Chamber Military Affairs Committee is more involved in business direct engagement and marketing and events to support military families in the community. And then volunteering with organizations that serve the military community. So there's a variety of nonprofit organizations in Snohomish County: American Red Cross, Operation Homefront, various Rotaries and veteran serving organizations. And if you want to, really meet military families where they're at, if you engage with them and support their events and volunteer in that capacity, that's a great way to get in front of military families as well. Okay, any questions on marketing to the military before we move on to our third section? Somebody? No questions? No, good to go. Okay, we'll keep moving on.
Well, Olivia, we do have one question that was a little bit earlier, and it was on topic of your explanation of different areas of the military. And I think there was a question from Karen, just a brief one about merchant Marines. How do they fit in? And so I just wanted to give you a chance to bring that up whenever you feel that it might fit in.
Okay, that is a great question. And I think I will probably have to do some follow-up and have that put in the thank you information to you. They're not generally specifically mentioned in most of the Department of Defense information. So I'll have to see what category they would fall under, but I will address that. And when Katie sends the thank you, I'll make sure that's included. It's a good question. Writing it down. I see Tom H has his hand up.
All right, if we can unmute Tom.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for your presentation. So if I were to have a program that was, specifically for veterans, and it needed to have a one-time identification, and then we could issue something that says you are now qualified for this program, is the burden of producing that one-time thing, going to a place and producing that one-time thing, is that a barrier, you think, or is that something that people would be willing to do for the long-term benefit?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So, and I think it just depends. Every veteran is different, and it matters if they're going to have to produce, like I mentioned, that DD 214, their paperwork. That's kind of cumbersome. So, it'll just matter how much you're asking them to prove. And then also what the benefit is, how big is it? If it was some kind of large incentive, I would probably be willing to trek across town and show something if it was for some sort of major discount that would be really meaningful to move the needle for my family. So I think you have to kind of weigh how invasive and what you're asking them to prove. I would like to tell you that people never take advantage of discounts and pretend to be in the military or the veteran population, but it does happen. And so if you're going to offer it and not ask for some kind of proof, it may be that people will claim that they're part of the community when they're not, unfortunately. I'm not answering your question 100% and telling you yes, but I think everything, that just has a lot of caveats on it. But I think that if you can store the information and then every time they come back after that, it's sort of saved, that's lovely.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Okay. Were you good to move on? All right. We're going, Karen Thompson has a question.
Good morning, and thank you, Matt, for your response to the Merchant Marines, because I know they hold a Coast Guard license, and so I wasn't sure how they, they're basically employed by the federal or licensed by the federal government. The question that I have is that, and I see a colleague here, we're part of the Alzheimer's Association, and, we're looking for ways to educate people on the services that we offer. And so I'm wondering, are one of those the websites you just put in a good resource for us to go to see how we can work together to offer our services?
Mhm. So I think there's a variety. So probably depending on what the service level is or what you're looking for from an engagement perspective. So if you're offering services directly to the military community and you're wanting to make sure that they know about something from a nonprofit organization perspective, I think that we could talk separately. Actually, Karen, if you want to reach out to me, the Washington State Department of Veterans Affairs has a calendar and a resource guide listings that we're working on so that veterans know about services within the state. That might be a good source for you. So for other businesses, like for-profit businesses, plugging in these capacities are just some of the examples, and more paid sponsorship opportunities and getting involved on these committees. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. All right, we're going to move on to engaging the military community as volunteers. I'm not sure how many nonprofits like Karen are represented on the call, but I do want to touch on this. I came from the nonprofit world. And this is a whole 1-hour presentation that I make. And I think it's really important for our civilian community to understand that in serving the military population and our veteran population, one of the best ways we can serve them is to encompass them in our community, to engage them, and outreaching to them and asking them to be volunteers. It feels like you're making an ask, and they already serve our country. So it feels strange to say, or it may feel strange to say, we also want you to do this too. But the reality is that by volunteering and being a part of your nonprofit organization or whatever community event you might be putting on, that really helps military families and veteran families feel connected. And I can say that myself, that my family settled here in Lake Stevens in, I don't know, 2005 or something, a long time ago. Felt like a long time ago. And we got involved with the United Way and started doing a lot of family volunteerism. We went to a different nonprofit every month. It was the best way. It's probably why I knew we were never going to leave Snohomish County, because we fell in love. We met so many different people, and it really helped us build our community network. And I think that's really true when active duty families or National Guard, Reserve, and veteran families are needing to establish roots and make community. That there's not very many ways that are better than volunteering. So please don't feel like it's another ask, because really you're engaging. There are so many benefits to nonprofit organizations by utilizing military volunteers. Military volunteers contribute more than 8.7 billion hours, which equates to $179.2 billion in the US annually, which is wild. They build constituency, they're more likely to donate if they volunteer, and then they become advocates for your organization. Military volunteers benefit too, like I was mentioning. Oh, Gary, did you have a question?
Oh, I have a question in the chat, but I can wait until you're ready.
Okay. It's career experience, skill development, social opportunities, meaningful work, and other reasons that are specific to the population, like plugging into the community and making friends, things along those lines. Particularly for military spouses, the opportunity when you don't have a consistent work history to be engaged with a nonprofit who will really value your work experience and utilize you in a way that will help move your career along as a volunteer is very important. Veterans, 26.3% of young veterans volunteer in their communities. That's a higher rate than all civilians, as well as older veterans. And older veterans volunteer 186 hours annually, the most time of any group in the United States. And then I have this fun graphic from the Got Your Sticks organization, just from a civic health index. The average number of volunteer hours, 169. Non-veterans average 126 hours annually. Veterans are more likely to vote in local elections, attend public meetings than non-veterans, working with their neighbors to fix problems in their community. They give to charity at a higher rate, and they also like to contact their public officials. So all good things. So just that helping them plug in and connecting them to the way to do that. So motivators, I've already touched on several of these, but community involvement, purpose. We have an all volunteer service. And so that, commitment to raising your hand and literally volunteering to serve is intrinsically part of what our service members and our veterans do. It's who they are. Self-worth, building new skills, creating a network and personal connections. My boss likes to say it's not who you know or what you know, it's who knows what you know. And when you're part of a military family, or you're a military spouse, or you're a veteran, there may not be a lot of people in the community who know what you know. And so building a network of people for that, our service members will get out of the military eventually. They're going to retire and need a second life job, or they're going to transition out prior to retirement and need to have a job after that. And so having a community base of people who know what they know can help them get their next job whenever that time comes. Sense of mission, love of country, and then service to the military community, particularly for our veteran population. That concept of paying a debt back to their fellow service members. If it's a veteran and they're wanting to volunteer, engaging them in a way that they can volunteer to serve the military community is really meaningful for them. Active duty. So this is just a bunch of text. And basically what it all boils down to is that the Navy region, all of Navy Command, has a policy of developing sailors by encouraging them to volunteer. And there are 5 flagship areas of that: Project Good Neighbor, personal excellence, health, safety, and fitness, environmental stewardship, and campaign drug free. And so plugging into one of those concepts really helps the installation sort of support what your organization is doing, because it's one of their flagship areas of focus. The reason that they want to support volunteerism in the community is to build the military community partnership for where the installation is located, improving the quality of life in the communities, and also developing the service member. That's an important part of, there's no division really between work and life in the military. So they're not just developing your work skill set. They want to make the service member, do what they can to make the service member a complete and have good experiences on duty and off duty, although there's never off duty. So recruitment, if you're recruiting for volunteers, how can you do that? Membership-based organizations, so that are military focused or veteran focused, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, American Legion, Disabled American Veterans, Navy League are just some examples. There isn't a volunteer coordinator on the installation for Naval Station Everett, and you can usually locate that person through the public affairs office or the chaplain. There are some complications with engaging at the installation level. They move. You'll develop a really great relationship with the volunteer coordinator, and they'll help you build connection and community on the installation to support your events or whatever you're doing. And then they're going to get orders. They're going to leave you. So that volunteer coordinator relationship is great for our nonprofit organizations, and they do fantastic things. But it's a relationship that has to be renewed every few years. That's just the reality of military life. Okay, before we move on to workforce development, are there any questions on nonprofit and volunteerism engagement for the military community?
So, Olivia, I do have a question here from Tom H. It looks like he's asking, does community service help with the service members' professional promotional opportunities?
Great question. And yes, I would informally say that answer is yes. But again, I am not a veteran. I did not serve myself. But what I can tell you is that having been a senior director at a nonprofit organization, when the sailors who volunteered for me at Operation Homefront volunteered, they asked for a letter for their service jacket, which is a collection of good things that they have done. And so we would write a letter for them and say how many hours they did, what kind of an impact they made. And I would sign those letters because when they reviewed when they were up for promotion, that was just one more element to be in that comprehensive review. So those letters do go in their service jackets. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, Tom, because I really need to add that to my presentation, that if you have active duty service members volunteering for you, whether that is your job at a nonprofit, or if you work for an organization or an event that's doing something that engages the volunteer community from the installation, please write them letters for their service jacket so that they can, and that service jacket is a folder, I'm sorry. It's like just a folder of all of the things they've done in their position, all of their accolades and awards and good work that they've done. Whenever they're up for promotion review, they review all the pieces of paper. Maybe it's digital now, I don't know, but they review all this documentation. And so if you can put a letter for them in that helps whenever they're making that review. I'm not going to tell you that somebody gets promoted because they volunteered a lot, but it certainly helps make a more complete picture of what they're doing in the community. Great question. Anything else? All right, let's move on. So part of my role as the military spouse liaison for the state, I also work as a volunteer ambassador for the Society for Human Resource Management Foundation for their Veterans at Work program. And so I'm using some of their slides because they're better than anything I would have created. So this is the official document from Society for Human Resource Management in this section. They've got all the great data. So we're going to talk about military spouses and veterans from an employment perspective. There's two categories that I'm not necessarily mentioning here, but that are really important. One is National Guard and Reserves. Our National Guard and Reserve service members are not working full time in the military, but they have a military commitment, but they still they have civilian jobs generally. So we also want to make sure that when we're thinking about workforce development, that we're also making sure that we have veteran and service member engagement programs, that we're thoughtfully engaging our National Guard and Reserve service members as well, because they need civilian jobs and they need employers that understand their military commitment. And the second part of that I'm not touching on because they're part of the veteran community, but I just want you to keep it in mind, is the transitioning service member. Getting out of the military is, a big process. You're changing your work that's been your work/life, and you're moving into a civilian job. Whether you're doing that after 20 plus years of service and you're retiring, or you're doing that after 6 years of service and you're transitioning out, employment needs to happen in the civilian sector. And so we need employers to be mindful of the needs of transitioning service members as well, and make sure that they're talking to them and understanding that that's something that's an important population as well. Military spouses. I am one. I was raised by two, my mom and dad. And, it's an important population. They sacrifice a lot to make sure to be a part of a military family. And we want to make sure that we're serving their needs. This data here doesn't take into account the White House's recent report that was published last month. I shared that data with you. 34% of military spouses became unemployed through December of last year. This number says 24%. Estimated that's about 3 times higher than the civilian population. Why? Well, they move a lot. Think about if you moved every 3 years, how hard that would be to have a job. And then whenever you move and you're starting over, you're not going to have an income. Are you prepared to not have an income for 6 months every 3 years? That's what our military families have to face. So we want to do whatever we can to support that second income, if they're choosing to have a second income in their family, to help them make that time faster whenever they're transitioning into our community. I know a lot of you guys have job openings and job opportunities. So, there are military families that would like to plug in. A lot of them, we talked about volunteerism. I'm always reluctant to say military spouses are good volunteers because people always come calling and saying, oh, you can do an internship or you can volunteer for us and you're not working, so why not? That's true to gain experience. And it helps to have continuity on the resume, develop networking, like I mentioned, and then for skill development as well. But military spouses are a great workforce. They tend to be more educated than their civilian counterparts. 84% have some college, 25% a bachelor's, 10% an advanced degree. And 56% of employed spouses report they're working in the area of their education or training. So they're actually helping to move the needle for their employers in how they were educated. And there is a large discrepancy there's a large issue of not only unemployment for military spouses, but also underemployment, where they just take a job because they need to keep the resume consistent, but it's not in line with their experience level and their education level. So trends in employment, the biggest trend that I would say in employment is, quite a few years ago, as a nation, we started to talk about veteran unemployment. And we really worked hard to get the corporate sector involved with government and nonprofit agencies to move the needle on veteran employment. And we've had much success in addressing veteran unemployment. We haven't had as much success in addressing military spouse unemployment. So there are a lot of partners at the table. The solutions are, being addressed. It's been about 10 years since we started paying more attention to military spouse unemployment needs. Joining forces, hiring our heroes, these are probably terms that you've heard, are all things that are focused on solving these issues. So those are just important things to pay attention to. COVID has had, it's been a terrible thing. It's hurt so many, we've had so much loss. But coming out of COVID, what it has done for the workforce is shown that remote opportunities, like right now, I have a cold. I wouldn't be able to do this presentation. I'd be worried of exposing my germs to all of you, but I'm able to do this presentation today and keep all of you from getting sick. And so that is going to hopefully have some influence on the military spouse employment issue, because then they can hopefully maintain employment when they move and they can stay with companies consistently. One of the things that whenever you see a military spouse resume, what can you do to help this community and help them find employment and engage and really get connected to meaningful career opportunities? So they might not have a chronological resume. They may not be able to show you work history the way that you're used to seeing it from people that don't move around a lot in their community. They may have attended several different colleges to earn their degree. They may have had to job hop a little bit. Those are not necessarily things that should mean that you discount them. In the traditional hiring sector, sometimes those things have meant that a candidate has been discounted. But a military spouse, if you know that they're a military spouse, if you see these things on their resume or you see these things on their application, please think, our nation made them move. They had to give up their education in the middle of their pursuit and then start it over again somewhere else. They had to leave a job they loved and go and try to find something new in a new location. And there was a gap there because it was challenging. You may see volunteer positions listed as in their work history. And sometimes that was frowned upon. But in our military spouse community, we really do encourage them to put volunteer positions as part of their work history to show some continuity and skill development. I talked a little bit about how we're addressing trends, so I'm not going to go too much into this slide. Transition challenges for the different sides of the community, veterans and military spouses. So I mentioned, and everything was sort of building, I mentioned the MOS and the NEC issue, the acronyms that are the job functions for the different branches of service. So they have to translate those job function acronyms into a resume. That's very challenging for service members. They have classes on how to do this. And understanding that, they're trying really hard to literally translate one language, the military language, which is its own beast, into civilian speak. And you might read that and feel like it's sort of stilted or it doesn't come across very well on the resume, but they're coming from a whole different way of communicating and speaking. And they'll quickly transition once they're in an environment where they're accepted and embraced by their civilian community whenever they're in a new work environment. But giving some grace, if they're listing their skill set and their work experience in a very military-esque way, letting that understanding that that's difficult to translate is really important. And then stereotypes. We talked about bridging the divide for veterans and why that's so important. Being a military-friendly employer really generates business. People want to do business where there are military connected employees working, and they know that it's military friendly in that capacity. So if you work hard to understand the culture and embrace this kind of hiring, it really does make a difference. The other important thing to remember is childcare. It is very hard to find childcare whenever you don't have set hours, and service members often don't have set hours. I drove myself to Providence Hospital when my daughter was being delivered because my husband was flying an airplane at Naval Air Station Whidbey Island. And, I didn't know what to do. And so these are things that make it difficult to have a life and to work. So just being mindful of that and helping your employees and your candidates plug in those capacities as well. Gary, did you have a question?
Not at all. I just wanted to queue you up for any final questions that you wanted the group to ask before closing remarks.
Yeah, I'm almost at my final slide, so I'm just going to run through these super fast. We talked about some of the barriers, the lack of network and education experience and things like that. I want to really make sure that you focus on this five targets here. As you're developing a program, the life cycle for employees, making the employer be ready to welcome and embrace veterans and military spouses is so important. If you want to engage the military community as being your employees, you need to prepare yourself by taking that online training I mentioned, or making sure that your HR department is ready, recruiting, onboarding appropriately, developing your talent, and then helping them move through your organization and grow with you. One of the ways to do that is with an employee resource group and helping veterans engage in military connected families members engage with each other if they're employees within your organization. I talked a lot about assessing military candidates whenever they're applying. Being aware, particularly also in the interview, this is true for veterans and transitioning service members, that they have a different way of presenting themselves. They may not be as casual as what you're used to because if they're transitioning directly out of the service and applying for your organization, they're not used to how the non-military speak goes yet. But again, that will soften over time, most likely. Sourcing candidates. So we talked about the resource group for developing a veteran resource group or a military connected resource group. Please reference back to what I mentioned on definition. So if you call it a veteran resource group and you want your military spouses to be a part of it, that might feel a little off-putting because they're not veterans. So if you have an employee resource group within your organization, what would you call it if you want military spouses to be a part of it? And then development resources that I want to really encourage you to engage with. Naval Station Everett has a work and family life consultant. They have a variety of them. Amber Hawk is the employment readiness representative at Naval Station Everett. If you have a job posting, you can call Amber. She will post it for you. Actually, whenever we send this slide out, I'll put her email on there too. WorkSource Washington is part of the American Job Centers initiative across the United States. And there is Snohomish County WorkSource. They have career counselors that are specific for the veteran community. And so they will post your listings. They will send them via email out to the different partners to make sure that veterans and military spouses are connected to whatever job openings you have. I've got 2 amazing trainings to start your veteran or military connected programming. One is Discover the Talent. That's through Hiring Our Heroes. It is a free program. You can just sign up and they have some training, and then they give you a badge that shows you are a military spouse friendly business. And then Veterans at Work is through the Society for Human Resource Management Foundation. It's about a 10-hour certification that your business can take free. And then you can show that you are a Veterans at Work certified business, another military friendly thing you can do to engage the community. And then finally, Washington State has a program called Yes Vets. And if you hire veterans, 1 through however many, you can be called a Yes Vet business. And again, a military friendly, veteran friendly business. And so these are just all free things that you can do to post your listings and show the community that you're really engaged and you're walking the talk. Okay, now, sorry about that, Gary. Questions?
Well, we're down to just a few minutes left, folks. So we're just going to probably give Olivia just 1 or 2 additional questions really quickly. I see one from Tom that mentioned, remind us who we should contact if we're looking for volunteers. Does it vary depending on the activity?
So if you're looking for active duty volunteers, I would suggest that you reach out to Naval Station Everett's public affairs officer. They did just appoint a new volunteer coordinator. And if I can get permission to share her name and email address before I send the slides out, I'll put that in my slide for you.
Okay, and I think that's the only question that I can see here. There are a lot of comments looking for engagement with you after the fact. So I want to make sure everyone gets that information from Katie after this. And I see Janet has also shared some info here as well. So Olivia, I'll just leave it to you to give kind of a 1-minute closing.
Absolutely. Please reach out if you have any questions. I'll make sure my email and phone number are in the thank you. And I just really appreciate everyone having an interest in working with and engaging our military community. This is so important, and we have such a great community network here, and I'm so proud of Snohomish County. So thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you so much, Olivia. That was excellent information and lots of engagement in the chat. There seems to be a whole host of folks who have some experience here or engagement or questions. So let's keep this moving forward for sure. So thank you, Olivia. As we move on, we will likely see an opportunity on October 26th to start off with a conversation, Coffee Chats conversation about the labor market. So that'll be at 8:30 a.m. folks. Beyond that, I just want to thank again Olivia Burley for giving us an amazing presentation. And I think we know what's up next here. So if we can go to gallery, Katie, we will, let's see if we can remove, let's go to gallery view. Those of you who are coffee goers realize that this is our opportunity to highlight what we had this morning for coffee. So in solidarity, I'd like to bring everyone's coffee cups to the top. If you're on screen, if you haven't been on screen, now is the time to pop on screen. I see all of you popping up. I see Lisa from PTAC there, the glorious cup there. Folks, as you go out today, remember that you are in control of your energy. Don't let anyone take it away from you. And again, thanks for joining us. Economic Alliance, Snohomish County. Have a great day.